What? It's not like we've all been sitting for us, you know.
by monks.
Or Jedi. Oh yeah, commentary on the season 2. I wonder if we could have that. Yeah, should we try to play season 2, or should we just do that? Because there is a season 2 that's in the okay, season 2 right, gotcha. I forgot about a season 1.
I know more. On my trip.
Oh, did it? Oh. Yeah. So, you happen to have a copy of something else?
Yeah.
I don't want that. Waiting on the bells. Yeah. It's a little bit. Yeah, is this open or not? Either one. Right. Great, I got that. Okay. That's good. Ooh, that's actually a great idea. And to do the next letter. You want this on your side. What's that? Yeah. We don't have anybody talking to us. You that also broadcasting. Oh no. And I still have no.
This one get a pretty good following. Doesn't watch.
It's been regular because we've been monthly. So typically a dozen or so tune in. Again, lurkers. We mostly get people just watching. And then the ones in Finland. Right now, they're staying up for this. So, yeah. Yeah. Secret aid.
Keep it clean.
Which one?
Which one?
That was it.
This laptop.
Means there's something on the lens or something.
Really?
Not really. Okay, it's the one. It's the Mac. No, the Mac would be. No, it could be. Could be a light thing.
Could be actual text.
Problem is without lights.
That's good. That's fine.
How about point one of them towards the audience?
Where were you on July 13th?
Yeah, that's great. Great, I hope you see your kid.
He turned it off. I was just kidding. Oh, yeah, this is
Yep.
Sailor Moon.
R.
Is flying son of the serpents.
What? Art? Oh, the string, yeah.
Oh, that's a better thing.
Laser? Yeah.
How that works.
I don't see it.
I don't see a lightsaber. That would be a copyright.
I see a
I
psionic
see a
spirit
psionic
blade.
spirit blade.
TM. Obviously, you can correct the record. Horrific play.
It's super good.
We're just getting the word out to everybody how we're going on.
Gathering the invisible crowd.
Like the Tolkien Society Facebook page.
Yeah, you guys are important.
Yes.
Yes,
Living
beings.
Whether or not
Whether or not we can get everybody on board, but we'd like to
have the
largest group possible.
See all the good
stuff going on.
Yeah,
Yeah, YouTube. What's the birds, Charlie?
Do I need interns?
Bars,
Just going and just copy, pasting, clicking post.
So then, are the hospitals? You just find them.
I don't know where it is. I don't know if it's Oh, did you see also in those videos I had a whole thing from C.S. Lewis during the war?
No.
Yeah, there's some private or public readings he did, most of which were lost.
But there's no video of it, it's just audio, right?
Right. They just show a slideshow while he's talking.
Nice.
I thought you'd really appreciate that.
Cool.
Alright, Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, Serenity, everything's China, right? All right. Oh, I was going to have Richard there so he could be on the microphone for the society. Actually, or you could just, or if Robert, if you could just straight well, continue to share, but you will share, and then just move the microphone to yourself so you can be part of the conversation.
Feel free to grab another chair.
You're another regular society member. We have plenty of chairs in this house. You just got to bring them down. All right.
Is enough light?
You guys tell me, put me on the spot.
Better?
Okay. Well, you gotta just put it the other way because now you're losing all your light.
It's all your fault, Josh.
No, I'm blinded now.
Blinding the rest of us. We can't see the screen. But.
Right there.
If it's important for the camera to be able to see the screen.
It should auto adjust.
Okay.
See, it's auto. Okay.
Rolling.
Yep. There's something there. I'm a figment. All right. Welcome to TolkienMoot IX, broadcast session number 2. This is the August meeting of, it's a fun. The August meeting.
Yes, very August.
Of the Ea Tolkien Society.
More
And
August.
a live audience and an online audience. Hello, TolkienMoot. So we have Brian and Richard's off camera, but he's here on mic number 1. And make sure you have the mic turned on, and I'll switch on it. And it's facing switched up and it's off. Okay. Our good
Hawk Robinson in gear, as befits the occasion of TolkienMoot.
Quasi-Numenorian. So, yes, I do have a sword handy, but I don't have the right belt for it. So.
He only uses it to splice wire.
This is worthy of an orc rather than a Dunedain. It's made from the leaf spring of a car.
Nice.
Old car. So it's very flexible.
That's how Jess used to make it.
And it'll go through heavy steel, but it's very poorly balanced. It's a meat cleaver. Anyhow, so we're here on our first official day of TolkienMoot, although for the hardcore gamers, it's the second day of the marathon of TolkienMoot. And so for those of you who haven't tuned in or participated in the Tolkien Society meetings, it's a little more scholarly, whereas the earlier meeting was more about role-playing gaming. And tomorrow's Talk Radio is kind of a mixture of role-playing gaming, Tolkien scholarly discussion, and fandom and sci-fi and all that. This is the more scholarly slice of it. We get into a little more esoteric,
more about his writings.
Yes, and the person. And offshoots. We've covered George MacDonald, we've covered C.S. Lewis, and many others of the influences either that they had on Tolkien or Tolkien's influences on them.
Seems to be flipping back and forth. I wonder if it's not the mic till Richard talks.
It means that
is it picking up the sound from
another. I need to mute a mic on one of things to stop doing that. I think it's this one.
Just in case it makes it
dizzy.
Yep. Yes. Okay. Well, the way this is set up, so we're broadcasting in that laptop, and then it's going over the internet and coming back to this laptop. And this is the audio that everybody on the internet's hearing. So that's why there's latency. So if you want to hear yourself, it'd echo, and then eventually the feedback that comes with it.
Oh, that's what everybody else is seeing.
That's what everybody else is hearing and seeing.
That'll give us the illusion we're in a cave.
Yeah. But since we're not having a conversation like we tried to with Thomas earlier, I'm going to go ahead and mute that with new batteries. I mean, everything went wrong. The battery started to die. So I was like, ah! So I put fresh batteries in. Okay. So one of the nice things, both Brian and I are actual paying members of the UK Tolkien Society, and this is an official SMEAL of the UK Tolkien Society.
Maybe we should explain what a SMEAL is for those who don't know.
Basically, there's the UK Tolkien Society in the UK, That's the official one. But then there's all these others that are endorsed kind of under them as separate entities, but umbrella from that. They don't own the Smeals. Right, we're not, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we are an independent entity from them, but we are officially recognized. We are in the back.
And the Smeal is actually a term from the Hobbit and
yep.
from the Lord of the Rings. So it's in the, if you're familiar with the hobbits in Middle Earth, for example, the Tooks that live in Tuckborough, they live in the Great Smeal, which is like a huge burrow. So it's really relates to a dwelling, a settlement, kind of a separate offshoot. And so that's what we are. We're kind of our own offshoot of the United Kingdom Tolkien Society over here in Spokane, Washington.
And so we actually get listed on the website under a list of Smeals so that you can find one in your area. And then we also get, with our memberships, the Amen Hen, which is the Bulletin of the Tolkien Society. And then also Malorn, the Journal of the Tolkien Society. So the smaller bulletin is more about kind of Smeal stuff, although they do have little editorials and other unique pieces. Malorn's much more editorial, original content, lots of new artwork in each of the issues. It's full color. Amen Hen is black and white usually, although every now and then they have a little color in it.
Very nice one.
And this was a bonus month, because I think the other one was delayed. We received Amen Hen 241 and 242 simultaneously, as well as Malorn issue number 54 with Bilbo and Gollum, and I don't know what's going to show up. But.
So it's very cool. If you feel free to ask if you'd like to have a look at those and you know, just learn more about Tolkien's writings. And really the fan base out there is not only RPGers and people who like the movies, but you know, there's a lot of people who enjoy the writings as well, and fan art as well, and fan fiction, I think. But yep. Just on the notes, as far as maybe you know, just mention that.
Well, I will. I'm going to mention a couple of items, and I'll mention a little bit from the Amen Hen.
Yeah. A
couple of things that came with this. There's usually various meetings around the world, big events, and one of the largest ones is Oxenmoot.
Yep.
And this is going to be at Lady Margaret Hall, Oxford, Friday the 20th to Sunday the 22nd, September 2013. And so it included a booking form for it. It's £7.50 per person. Oh, that's the late fee. I was going to say, that can't be right. That's way too cheap. Yeah, it's a member is £32, non-member is £35. And then accommodations go up from there. But it has all the details. So one of these years, I would love to make it out there.
Yeah. And of course, the Oxenmoot, as well as TolkienMoot, references the
Old
idea
English,
of
Middle English of meeting,
which is where you see in the Lord of the Rings.
And then another thing that was included, and this is new, I don't know if they've included this before or not, is a 2013 members questionnaire. And it's asking gender, age, where you live, how long a member, other organizations, volunteer if you volunteered, and why you have or have not, satisfaction, etc. So I don't know if they've done this before now. I don't think they've done it in the time I've been a member for 3, 4, 5 years. I don't know if I've seen that before. So second thing on hand, there was one that jumped out. Took me a moment here to find it. Here we go. First Tolkien Reading Day in Croatia. And you have a nice, I'm going to hold this up to the So on March 25th, they were celebrating the 10th anniversary of Tolkien Reading Day. Well, that's something we need to be aware of. But in Croatia, it was time for the first. The Croatian Association of Tolkien Fans, the Fellowship of Almarem, in cooperation with the bookstore Algoritam, organized this event, which included various media. Though we knew this year's theme would be Tolkien's landscapes, we did not want people to focus just on this on our first reading day. So the visitors were encouraged to read their favorite part of any of Tolkien's books, and in turn they got a thank you note with their name written on it and a book, they could choose The Hobbit, Tales from the Perilous Realm, or Roverandom. Books were also intended as a reward for best costume, but the weather was bad. It was snowing and it was pretty cold, so nobody turned up wearing one. Where'd this picture come from?
That's what they look like all the time in Croatia, apparently.
That's their normal, mundane garb. Nevertheless, we were more than pleased by the amount of visitors and their willingness to share their favorite book part with the rest of the fans. We wanted to remind young readers that The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings are not just great epic movies, but also amazing and fascinating literary works. Yet they showed us that they knew it already. A quick question. Out of everybody here, who has not actually read The Hobbit? Who has not read The Lord of the Rings? How about the Silmarillion? Okay, so The Hobbit everybody has read. Lord of the Rings everybody but one has read. Silmarillion we had about 4 or 5 that have not read it. Well, that's a whole other. That's many shows of discussion.
That is pretty typical, I think, from our experience. Would you say that most people, The Hobbit is
If they've read it.
If they've read any
Because
of
this
the
new
books,
generation, a lot of them have not read it.
but perhaps when they were younger.
We're hardcore diehards here,
Yeah.
so it's not a.
But even in
accurate
school, I
sample.
think I would tend to say a lot of people never read The Hobbit. They're ambitious to
Yeah.
read The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Although with the movies, maybe.
Yeah. Oh wow. 1936 for The Hobbit and 49 for The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Rob was required reading for his good.
Yeah.
Which school was that? Let's give them All Saints had required reading of The Hobbit in middle school. Excellent. Well done. Which one? Yes. Same thing. Good. Good.
I think in some schools it still is.
Yeah. Going back a bit for us there, yeah.
So
that's
that's great. Thanks, Hawk. So, and just by way of kind of quickly to mention, the last meeting we had was in July, and we met at Cheers Cafe. We'll be meeting in September on the second Saturday. I don't recall right now what that is, but the second Saturday of each month we meet, and from 1 o'clock till 3, I believe.
Right.
And we're meeting actually this in September at the Garland, the Rocket Bakery on Garland, and we're still finding a spot that works for us. So we're looking at some different possibilities.
That looks like that's going to be the 14th.
Thank you, Richard. So the 14th of September, which is very close actually to Frodo and Dudley's birthday, I believe, which is the 22nd of September. So we'll have to maybe put out some treats and entice people to come along and join in with us. You don't have to be an expert to enjoy Tolkien Society meetings. What we did talk about last time, I don't have formal notes to read this time, but I just want to say we've been going through this summer Tolkien's latest work, which you might be wondering about, as he's dead since 1973.
Publication.
His latest publication.
Posthumous.
That's right. The Fall of Arthur, just published this year in 2013, posthumously by his son, because it's an unfinished poem that Tolkien never published in his lifetime. His son Christopher finally felt it was ready and had written a very lengthy
Dissertation?
Yeah, basically a lengthy explanation and kind of analysis of his father's poem. And this was Tolkien's actual, really first and only attempt at writing Arthurian legend, or his own version of Arthurian story, which he stopped writing at about 1934. And the very next year, when he was kind of leaving us off in limbo land, he was sitting down one day, grading papers, and as you may have heard, he flipped to the very back of this one paper, and there was a blank page. And he was so bored out of his skull and wanted a break that he just, in the middle of, just on that blank page, wrote, "In the hole in the ground there lived a hobbit." And, you know, from that one sentence, he ended up, of course, this was the beginning of the whole story, which basically hijacked him from the fall of Arthur. He pursued the hobbit, never finished Fall of Arthur. And of course, we know the rest of the story is that he, after writing The Hobbit, got rave reviews, and then was begged basically by Ellen and Edwin to do a sequel. And so that's really why The Fall of Arthur never got finished. And so we've been reading through this, and it's really exciting for those who enjoy Tolkien's works, because if you like the kind of storyline he's written before, he's taken the familiar story of Arthur and he's really reworked it in a very Saxon, very English, very old, basic version with his own twist to it.
Although
we're
seeing some echoes in the language that appears in The Hobbit that seems to be inspired from
right. And so that's absolutely right. Definitely you can see some precursors to some things in The Hobbit. So we have not finished it, and so one of the things we were going to do, right, is that we were going to go through the next section of The Fall of Arthur, and we had
final canto.
Yeah, we're going to read the final canto, and you guys can be the audience, and we'd love audience participation for comments about this. At this point, we've already read about how Arthur has been tricked by Mordred to leave Britain and try to fight the Saxons who have been harassing them on their own turf. So Arthur, in this story, goes across the English Channel. He fights over there and defeats a number of the barbarians over there. But then, meanwhile, Mordred is secretly planning to take over Britain himself, and he's enlisted the local lords who turned against Arthur and are following Mordred. And Mordred has tried to spring the trap on Guinevere, who he desires for himself. But Guinevere escapes. Meanwhile, Guinevere's former, if you know the Arthurian story, Guinevere was unfaithful at one point. One of the knights of the Round Table was none other than Lancelot, who was the best knight of King Arthur's table, his Round Table knights, but he betrayed his queen and had an affair with Guinevere. Guinevere and Lancelot then basically go through this whole period of time where Lancelot then rescues Guinevere from certain death. And the queen eventually comes back and seeks pardon from the king, and Lancelot is completely exiled and shut out. Now, of course, Mordred is trying to take the king away from Arthur. Arthur's staying back to this is where we're picking it up, where he's really determined that Lancelot will be called king.
And just a correction, there are two, there's four, and then five is just one page. Okay, sure. So I'll just read a little bit, then hand it off to Brian, then Richard, and go through it like that. Canto 4. How Arthur returned at morn, and by Sir Gawain's hand won the passage of the sea. Wolves were howling on the wood's border. The windy trees wailed and trembled, and wandering leaves, wild and homeless, drifted dying in deep hollows. Dark lay the road through dank valleys, among mountain hills mist-encircled, to the walls of Wales in the west frowning, brown-faced and bare. To the black mountains, horsemen hastened on the houseless stones, no track leaving, tumbling waters from the fells falling. Foaming in darkness they heard as they passed to the hidden kingdom. Night fell behind. The noise of hooves was lost in silence in a land of shadow. Her trail faded in the trackless stones. Hound and hunter in the hills faltered. To the hidden kingdom and the holy vales, where Leo de Grance once long ago lived, beleaguered, lord enchanted, she hath fled and is free, but few love her. Fear her no longer, the fey woman. Fell fate take her. May her feet never return hither to trouble Mordred. From thy mind thrust her. With men deal thou, woman forsaking, and to war turning. Thine hour is at hand. Then his eyes wavered and his tongue halted. Turning slowly, with frown of thunder, fiercely Mordred gazed on him glaring. Begone, cried he. The master's hour, master chooseth. Not thou knowest, at need failing from vain errand thus ventured home, with tongue untamed to teach Mordred thy fool's counsel? Flee mine anger unto foul fortune, the fiend take thee.
Alone and long and lowering history. In his bosom there burned, under black shadows, a smoldering fire whose smoke choked him. His mind waited in a maze, walking between fear and fear. At first his thoughts seemed to him to be full, wandered by lusty years, but he gasped the serenity of that peace and steps that stood over his fingers, love was sullen, and his aid asking in her evil days. Good then, he lived in battle ceasing, and fair lily on the field table, once more be seen rushing spells arc and still the motive good. Thus he pondered long, for Lancelot's lord of vengeance most increased, and yet most ready, and words of witchcraft well remembered, that lords of vengeance the lily bearing in open battle should be as a talon suited. Thus wrath was coming, doubt was given, in his dark counsel, war and fate. The wind flashed. In cloudless skies, clear and golden, sunlight evening, sunlight rekindled in the glow. The sea glimmered under streaming stars in the sweet heaven. Day followed day. Dawn came bright with the breeze blowing wide at morning, cool and keen breeze. Cries opened. A sail! A sail on the sea shining! Watchmen were calling. Wailing voices from ward to ward the wind carried. The rasping branch buds for the beach. Peter left his eyes out of the balcony. Clear saw Ian standing. That was awesome. A early morning. At last, on his shrouds were shown sheen with silver, a white lady in holy arms, a big hair and four feet. Sun shone name not death, nor of near. Arthur entered. With his eyes wandered to the banner of Finland, that was 60, silver upon table, but he saw it not. The fair flower beneath and its field withered, deepening buckles, doing and moving. Sun mounted and its sails whitened, far over the sea, faintly sounding, faintly towering upward, as the stars to visit the mighty ship the morning. High, white timbers of cold velvet, on its sails a tone of sun rising, and its bloated banner in the sea shifted, a fiery ship, silver flame. Thus came down, which the garden, round sparkled, quick and revealing, 100 ships with rolled streams. That sun and the shield spinning. Behind beheld they the host staring, deep waves drumming from drawing barges, galleys and galleons of blue storm. 600 sailors in the sun clean, fair. Flags, streaming, 10,000 poles, barges numbered, rifling bulwarks, fragments of pieces, unites at the north and the United Kingdom. But Baron's kingdom, and that was his village, and not. Tolkien's own stories of during the music.
Yeah, he's trying to resurrect the ancient forms to generate a mythology. Page 51, line 159. Then Mordred laughed, loud and mirthless, words he sang. Wild were the trumpets, beacons were blazing. Banners were lifted, shaft rang on shield, and the shores echoed. War was awakened, and woe in Britain. Thus came Arthur to his own kingdom, and power and majesty, proud returning to Romaril. The switch is on. Oh. When running slowly by the shore now weeps a shuddering water, sun shone on swords, silver pointed, the spears sparkled as they sprang upward, white as wheat fields. Wheeling above them the crows were crying with cold voices. In the foaming sea flashed 1,000 swift oars sweeping. Saxon chieftains at their stems standing sternly shouted. Blades they brandished and broad axes on their gods calling, with grim voices. With dread faces, dragon-proud, they spurned their sea-horses to sudden onset. Swerving swiftly and swinging inward, beak met bulwark, burst were timbers, there were clang of iron and clash of axes. Sparked and splintered spears and helmets, smiths of battle on smitten anvils. There dined and hammered, deadly forging, wrath and ruin. Red their hands were. About Frieden pressed they, the proud and fair, the ships of Arthur with sheen of silver. There's another paragraph, right? I guess I'll go another one. Oh, I'll go to the end of the chapter. Then Gawain sounded his glad trumpet, his great galleon golden shining, as thunder riding thrusts among them, with wind behind her. In her wake followed lieges of Lothran, lords and captains. Oars were splintered, irons clave timber, and ropes were riven. With rending crash, masts dismantled as mountain trees, rushed down ratting into the roar of battle. Now grim Galuth, Gawain brandished, his sword renowned, smith enchanted, ere Rome was built with runes marked it, and its steel tempered, strong and deadly, forth leapt. He as fire, a flame wielding. The king of Gothland on his craven prow he smote to death, and to sea drave him. Upon the lords of Lochlin lightning hurled he. Helms bore crested, heath and standards hewed asunder. High rang his voice, Arthur calleth. The air trembled with thunderous answer 1,000-fold. As straw from storm, as stalks falling before reapers ruthless, as rope flying before the rising sun, rafale blazing his foemen fled. Fear overcame them, from board and beam, beaten fell they. In the sea they sank, their souls losing. Boats were blazing, burned and smoking, some on shore shivered to shards broken. Red ran the tide, the rocks staining, shields on the water shorn and splintered, as flotsam floated. Few saved their lives, broken and bleeding from the battle flying. Thus came Arthur to his own kingdom, and the sea passage with the sword conquered, Gawain leading. Now his glory shone as the star of noon, stern and cloudless over heads of men. To its height climbing, ere it fall and fail, fate yet waited, tide was turning, timbers broken, dead men and drowned. The dark jetsam were left to lie on the long beaches. Rocks robed with red rose from water. And that's the end of the canto. I hope I could be heard.
And just a little about it, by England. But anyway, in the story and the legend, they have this battle, and Arthur's side wins. But now, what does Arthur do? Now that he's gained the sea, there's still the land, and as it were, his own
kingdom held against him. This is the final canto.
Has anyone read any of the Arthurian legends before? Like Morte Arthur or any of the others? Brennan?
And Dragon Sight.
Katie? You have? Okay. So, comparing what you've heard in all this with us, although all the previous months are available. All the previous months are available online at the TolkienMoot channel on YouTube or the Tolkien Scholars website. If you want to listen to all the others, or of course get the book. So again, he's trying to make it in a different story perspective.
Well, I really felt that the story of Arthur was kind of definitely a British then adapted and in some ways transformed beyond all recognition by the French. So it goes kind of a little bit back to the old English-French rivalry, because Arthur basically had been, they had Arthur 2.0 or 3.0 on the continent, and this was the Arthur that really, in some ways, the story has continued. It wasn't the original Welsh, story.
This version has Lancelot in it, which I thought had been added by the French.
The French added Lancelot. The Round Table was added by them, I believe. So quite a bit of the story, as we know it, is actually not English at all.
Well, the version of the most different perspective was the, I forget who did it, but the Mists of Avalon. It was written from all of the women's, all the women's perspectives and such that in these stories. And
it's fascinating, actually, to see.
Really a long book.
If you're interested in Arthurian legends, I can't verify this, of course, but it's an interesting. You can read the book, The Keys of Avalon, which is written by two British guys that I met, who basically say that you can look at the sources that the Arthurian legend came from and trace it back to Wales, North Wales specifically. They even think you can locate fighting and all those things. But in some ways, it doesn't matter for Tolkien. And so let's have the last and unfinished canto.
That's right. And these are other segments that we pass around a little more. If anybody else wants to join in the reading, speak up. You're welcome to do so.
I agree, but I have no
Okay.
That's what I told
Did
you.
you raise your hand? Or that's not somebody. No. Okay. Canto Pat. Yes. Of the setting sun of Weatheril, thus Arthur abode upriding. At his land he looked and longed sorely, on the grass there green swaying, to whack at his bowl while the world lasted. The sweet to savour of salt mingled with wine-scented waft of clover, over sunlit turf seaward leaning. In kindly Christendom, the clear ringing of bells to hear on the breeze swaying. A king of peace, kingdom wielding, in a holy realm beside heaven's gateway.
On the land he looked, lofty shining, treason trod there, trumpets sounding in power and pride. Princes faithless, on shore their shields shameless marshalled, their king betraying, Christ forsaking, to heathen might their hope turning. Men were mustering, marching southward, from the east hurried evil horsemen. As plague of fire, pouring ruinous, white towers were burned, wheat was trampled, the ground groaning and grass withered. There was woe in Britain, and the world faded. Bells were silent, blades were ringing, hell's gate was wide, and heaven distant. Toll must he pay, and truage grievous, the blood spending that he best treasured, the lives losing that he loved dearest. Their friends should fall, and the flower wither of fair knighthood, for faith earning the death and darkness doom of mortals, ere the walls were won, or the way conquered, or the grass again their green springing, his feet should feel faring homeward. Never had Arthur need or danger, pained or daunted, turned from purpose, or his path hindered. Now pity whelmed him, and love of his land, and his loyal people, for the low misled, and the long tempted, the weak that wavered, for the wicked grieving. With woe and weariness and war sated, kingship owning, crowned and righteous, he would pass in peace, pardon granting, the hurt healing, and the whole guiding, to Britain the blessed bliss recalling. Death lay between, dark before him, ere the way were won, or the world conquered. And there's a little bit left.
That was a lot of World War One.
Yes. Would anybody else like to read? You can finish it?
No.
Did you want the note or?
Yeah, read the note too, would you?
The next 16 lines were written more hastily on a separate slip of paper, so apparently this was even rougher than the rest. For Gawain he called, gravely speaking, dark thoughts he showed in his deep trouble. Liege and kinsman, loyal and noble, my tower and charge, my true counsel. The path before us, peril late. We have won the water, the walls remain, and manned with menace might defy they. Do we rightly choose ruthless onset, betrayed or keeper, toll of death, to pay for passage, no price counting. On dread venture at disadvantage, all hope to hazard. My heart urgeth that best it were that battle waited, to other landing, our arms leading, let us trust the wind and tide ebbing to waft us westward. Here ends the Fall of Arthur in its latest form.
And then the remaining, how many pages? So the next page is all commentary,
Next page is 61.
and the last page is
233. That includes.
well, commentary.
And 150.
Pages too. On the topic.
Well,
Lengthy. All right. That's a lot of content.
Yeah, John's time. Any comments on that last section of the Fall of Arthur, which was where he left the story?
And started working on a Hobbit and Holden.
Yes. Where would you take it next, or where do you think he might have been going with the story if he had been able to finish it?
Well, maybe he just realized he was getting to the really depressing part, where everybody dies and nobody's happy.
It's called the Fall of Arthur for a reason.
Yeah. And it isn't just his death. I mean, there's.
Is it the death, or is it his unforgiving way after being betrayed and the possible destruction by his own hand
Right.
achieving drive?
Well, actually, to make an argument that he was willing to be quite forgiving, even if the people that betrayed him, because it says in that last part there, he could just, go for it, scale the cliffs, take no prisoners, and just bloodily take back his kingdom. And yet, he says, even for the weak and the wicked, he delayed. He would rather give people a chance to rethink it and come around the island from a different direction so that he wouldn't have to spill too much blood.
I didn't take it as that at all. I took the last part as this. It was more fixated on his pride and the betrayal as opposed to the destruction of the entire kingdom. That it was more internal demons that he was facing as opposed to the external war of the land.
Well, probably it's both, I'd say. But
I recall some of the versions that the Battle of Mordred was actually him trying to meet with Mordred to set up a treaty, and Mordred took it as an opportunity to get rid of it.
It's a Mordred's betrayal that under a false flag.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've read more, but I remember the whole fall, the whole end being very much focused on Arthur's failures and his kind of the undoing came in his own hands, and everything he did basically he screwed up. This is much more heroic and more focused on him as a symbol rather than a failure.
which, in a sense, might make a lot might be kind of representative of the different Arthurian traditions, because in a sense this represents the pre-Saxon invasion and the fall not only of Arthur, but of a way of life. There's a lot of symbolism there, and I think maybe in that sense he's more of a symbol and a heroic kind of
absolutely, and the
metaphor.
The French influences on Lemort definitely it's a whole lot easier to justify invasion and conflict with the culture if their hero is a failure. And in this one, Tolkien's definitely trying to build him up as a myth, and he's really pressing into myth. And dies.
Of course, the Battle of Hastings was later on won by the French, or the Normans, French-speaking Vikings, essentially, who end up conquering Saxons. So it's kind of an irony that Arthur would be a symbol also for the Saxons in saying, in a way, we got invaded too. We got ripped off. So
Cornelius and Christie's and they all invade, they all move in, and once they live here, they're English.
Yes. There is a lot of truth that's
stated. That was kind of the Chinese methodology. If somebody invaded them, they just waited for them to become Chinese.
It's possible that story, the author, the main character was actually a reflection on Britain and their lost control of their different colonies.
I think you could apply it that way, but Tolkien would say that's not what's meaning. He would say that's allegory, and by no means was it one of the features.
Applicability versus allegory.
But I think you could say, sure, there's several layers of meaning, but I think he's probably thinking a lot farther back, because actually at the time this was written...
Well, I'm not talking about current events in the 1920s. I'm talking the history of England itself through the Middle Ages.
Sure, using Normandy, all these things. Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure I'm able to answer that one.
Well, it's interesting too. He seems to be going with a more Saxon Arthur, where the feats of military might are glorified, where the French cared more about the romantic side of it, and I would think the Celts loved the military side of it, but also I think there was more of an emphasis on the brotherhood. And when you have a more tribal society like the Celts were, that kind of comes into it more. So, for example, there's a series of books by a historical fiction author named Bernard Cornwell that takes a more Welsh stance on it than anything else. And the very little basis of fact that we have for the Arthurian legend comes from the time after the Romans pulled out of Britain and the Saxons were encroaching on things, and he was kind of the last bulwark against that tide of barbarism that they brought.
Yeah, that's right. Really, History of Kings of Britain by Geoffrey of Monmouth, written in the 1100s, I think, for a Norman patron. So.
We should cover. You had another topic you want to talk briefly about the Hobbit tidbit you had.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Arthurian legend.
We should speak loudly.
A lot of the Arthurian legend, and things that Tolkien might be pulling from. There's one major. So there was a major English contribution to Arthurian legend as a whole. There's a French contribution. And believe it or not, there was a German writer in the 1700s. It was like 1600s. There was a member of the clergy of the church wrote most of what we know as the current Arthurian legend, the daughters, what people know in the folklore.
Right, like a folklorist.
And then there were ramifications based off as the legend spread to other cultures. they added their own things to it. Now, a lot of it was from what the French had done, but also the Germans had added some characters to it. I'm forgetting specifics, but there were some specific events in which they added, which is surprising considering, so far.
Although
from where it happened.
related to the Saxon side of it, so.
So the Saxons, so I was thinking because a lot of the Saxons were Vikings and German descent, that a lot, maybe that perspective comes from the Germanic literature and less of the French and English.
Truth, justice, and the Teutonic way.
With the Grail storyline of that be from the Germans?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know for sure.
I know the Grail is just completely medieval fiction.
I'm guessing it's French.
No, conspiracy by the Catholic Church to cover up the freedom of women and.
Dan Brown is our next guest. Okay, can you move on?
Yeah. We'll do it.
Isolation of smell. Okay, so we're going to move on to the second Hobbit film, which is due out on December 13th. Anybody planning to go see it?
I haven't seen the first one.
Okay, well,
I have it here.
you might
wanna watch
want
it?
to
I
do
thought you were
that.
going to tell me to get out.
No.
I'm not a fan.
We can still support and be interested in
His incarnation.
efforts to try, just like, well, and it goes back to the whole other minds and other hands quote.
Sure.
Not everybody's gonna do a great job, but they're making an attempt. They respect Tolkien enough to think it's worth telling the story. But as with all,
It's kind of like getting the
retellings.
Germans to spread the legend of Arthur.
that's right.
I think it's a stepping stone for someone who's going to make it better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of remakes.
Right. So,
Will this be like Beowulf, where every 10 years there's a new remake?
so Peter Jackson's, of course, his track record so far is that he directed the 3 films of The Lord of the Rings, but this last year released the Hobbit, what's the subtitle again?
Unexpected Journey.
An Unexpected Journey. So here's from Peter Jackson's Facebook page. On July 25, he wrote, "Our last day of shooting. Ever since starting these blogs, there's been something I thought I'd like to try one day, as well as answering the other 19 questions I owe you, blogging throughout a shoot day in real time. Try to give you all a feeling for what we deal with on an average day." Today is not exactly average, given it's our last day of shooting, but if I don't do it today, I never will. So here goes. I'll try to update as much as I can during the day, at least with a quick photo. Text will depend a little on how busy it gets. Can you imagine being Peter Jackson? I mean, whatever you think of his films, it's an insane schedule.
And he works really, really long hours.
Very, very long
I
hours.
bet you he has a like this that's really good at text following you around. He says it.
Right now, it's just gone 6:30 a.m. here in Wellington. I'm in bed, about to get up. I didn't get much sleep, too stressed about how we're going to get through everything we need to shoot. I kept running over it in my mind. We're shooting scenes for film 3 today. Stuff you will see in December 2014, so I'm going to try and make this honest but spoiler-free. I've been lying here in pitch darkness watching fight rehearsals over and over again. Our stunt coordinator, Glenn Boswell, worked with the actors last weekend designing some climactic battle moments. He filmed them, and I have them on my iPad in the application we wrote called Wingnut TV. It's a program that allows a huge amount of material to be cataloged, used, and updated each day over the internet. Interesting. It contains all our dailies, edited films, previews, music, and much more. I'm looking at the fights, figuring out the angles I'll need to film them today. A huge amount to do, and needs to get done. Our shoot day starts at 8:30 a.m. and is supposed to finish at 7:30 p.m. Later on, when he's posting, he says, finally finished at 9:30, I think it was, or 10. I suspect we'll be working late. Whenever we work a long day, I joke with the crew that I'm just softening them up for when Jim Cameron shows up in Wellington to shoot Avatar 2 and 3. Well, it's not really a joke. Update off instead. And then he goes on to, post pictures,
Right,
fun
right.
things. So if you're interested, you might want to go on Peter Jackson's Facebook page, and you'll see from the number of followers which Peter Jackson to look up. And he's got interesting things on there. A lot of fun. And also just should mention here too that that's about the last of the films. So Desolation of Smaug comes out this Christmas, this December, and then The Hobbit There and Back Again will come out in December 2014, and that's what they just finished filming. They just finished the last day of filming, July 25. So that's our most recent update on news from the films.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any wanted to add, Richard, or anyone else? Comments before we wrap up?
I think that I read The Hobbit recently, and I haven't really watched the movie. That was something I wanted to do before I saw the first piece of it. And I see what he's doing is he's taking a story and he's Hollywoodizing, which I don't see as being such a bad thing, because maybe it opens the eyes of some people who might be really into it, and then maybe he just kind of attracts people to it and makes some money. But in the end, we might find some diehard fans that go, well, I want to read this book, that book, and really start getting into it, and then probably join things like what we have here. So in the end, I don't see it as such a bad way of opening people's eyes. Yes, they'll watch the movie, read the book, and go, well, the story doesn't really go like that, and he's making a much grander thing out of something a little smaller, you know. But
more spectacle.
Okay.
If those individuals that will watch the film and go read the book and not finish the book with the disgust of, that's not the way it happened in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, we get that. I mean, and certainly, recent generation, there really is. It used to be when I allow people to read a book after they saw the show, and they're, I want to know more about that. But less in the last decade, I think it's depressing. You know, there's one that came out about for the first time IQs went down in the United States for this last 10 years or so. It's always been, ever since they started tracking it in the 1920s or 30s, going up and up and up and up, like it's always like mean IQ is 100, but relative we're getting spatially smarter based on, it's just one type of intelligence. There's a gazillion types of intelligence. But then this last decade, we've seen it dramatically turn, I forget how many points, it's almost double digits or more downward for the first time. Now part of that is we're doing things differently. You tests are only one type of intelligence, but
you would think that the way technology is moving this generation along, that it would open more doors for them, have more opportunities.
Yeah.
But I think it's almost doing the opposite.
There's a lot of
they're using just the internet for what they can gather from.
Yeah.
There's still so many books and things they
Well,
can
yeah,
do.
I think the internet, you know how to move a mouse and click.
Yeah.
Doesn't take much intelligence.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I don't think any of the studies can be conclusive, but I think we're becoming faster because there's so much information to sort through. We're becoming better, maybe at sorting through it. The question is, maybe is content suffering? Being able to concentrate, I think
and methodology.
I have a hard time with that too.
And methodology. We're not learning methodologies for problem solving.
Technology
Well, in the book thing, it seems like the movies aren't inspiring as many book readers as it's still not. It's not book sales, but it doesn't the ratio it used to be. A lot of people I talk to now saw the movie, didn't have any desire to read the books. They don't have time for it. They don't read. That they just read on the internet, and if it's anything longer than an article, they're not interested. So I agree with you. Hopefully, a lot of people might not otherwise have come across it, and then hopefully go to whole new levels. I totally agree with you on that.
Reinventing something for generation. That's what I think.
Yeah.
We need to keep bringing it to the next generation.
And I think there'll be other directors and other producers trying to improve upon the versions, and you'll have good versions and bad versions. I mean, I guess the other and stuff. Made it to the theaters as much, but yeah, what I want to happen someday, if it'll ever happen, is it doesn't special effects as much as the whole richness of the story.
Yeah, like
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, we have to 7 films, or Born of Hope.
Cartoon Hobbit, you know.
No, but if you haven't seen the films, these are 3 films. They're on the big stores.
Talking about live action fan films.
$5,000, and they have to come to terms with the Tolkien estate.
Really?
It's really good.
It's yeah, they did an amazing job.
$5,000.
I've seen the real problem with a lot of the Tolkien movies are that the children who are watching them, I have 3 myself, they have a hard time using their own imagination to be creative because they see it as it was seen in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But that's, so as a dad, I would agree. And I think that part of it then is...
And a teacher.
It's not either or, it's both and. I think, you know, like we read, every one of our kids, we read The Hobbit at age 6, The Lord of the Rings at age 8, and then encouraged them to read on the Silmarillion as they were interested, you know, because that takes a while.
Yeah.
But and I have 3 girls who know a lot about Middle-earth, and then one who's...
Hopefully they're tuned in right now.
Yes, they might be tuned in right now. So I would say, yeah, get them excited about the books young and early. Read to them, because that's something kids, if they don't like to read, you can still read to them, and it's a great family time. And then when they use their imagination, they can start to be more active as a storyteller, which is really what role-playing is also about.
And to tie in, thank you for the segue with the RPG research. I'll get my little tidbit in somehow. How much you get people into the game because they saw a movie or a comic or something, and they want more of it. So they learn about this role-playing game thing. They try it, they like it, and that's often a whole binge of reading, a whole binge of researching, whether it's about armor, metallurgy, cooking, herbs, whatever. There's 1,001 topics of potential research because you never know what each individual will be inspired by, and so that's the point. Keep processing that role-playing game, and you get people about that, and they all. It doesn't hook for everybody, but if it does hook for them, they want to enhance their character and their experience, and will read a lot more from that.
Just following on from that comment, I think that's why role-playing, in my opinion, in Middle-earth and in Tolkien's Middle-earth is particularly rewarding, because if you don't just approach it as another, slash and hack role-playing game, but as a story that you're entering into, then you're able to actually, not only for your character to be enhanced, but for yourself, to be willing to kind of get involved in the story and start to realize that while you know it is only a story, that stories have tremendous power to inspire us.
We went a little bit over, but I want to quickly, anybody online want to quickly post a question? I know people have been listening. They kept commenting on the distortion and background noise, and apparently it's mostly my mic. My voice keeps overpowering. Taking it down. Well, it's not that. That's spitting audio, that's the thud, the sound. But I have to talk down here, sound like Batman or something. I don't know. So anyway, any questions? I don't think this. Let's see. Yeah, we don't.
By the way, while Hawk's checking the comments, anybody who's not able to join us in person can still join us online, like today, on September 14th, which will be the second Saturday in September. And we should be at the Rocket Bakery on Garland here in Spokane from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We'd love to have you in person or online. And so the next time, what we'll be doing is we'll be reading through the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. And these are not really that boring, because when you think about it, Tolkien was so knowledgeable about so many things. He talks about World War II in here. He talks about all kinds of topics. And so this next one that we're going to get into, I'll just read a very brief selection from Letter 70. he says to his son, quote, I have now written, or very nearly written, all the matter up to the capture of Frodo and the High Pass and the very brink of Mordor. Now I must go back to the other folk and try to bring things to the final crash with some speed. Do you think Shelob is a good name for a monstrous spider creature? It is of course only she plus lob equals spider, but written as one, it seems to be quite noisome. Let the taster. He gives away his own secrets while he's writing the story, so if you're interested, you might want to...
And typically, every month we read excerpts from there and discuss it, but this came out, and so we've been spending a few weeks going through that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us online here at Tolkien. Better when I do Batman, because it's not overpowering the mic.
Is Artemir with us?
Yeah. Yes, that's who's been coaching us. All right, well, everybody, thank you for joining us for the Society meeting. We have one more broadcast tomorrow, Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific time. There will be Middle-earth talk show. We will have guests, myself co-hosting with Michael Martinez. We have a special guest, Professor Chris Seaman. He wrote Iron Crown Enterprises MERP modules in the 90s. He created for much. It was most of the second edition, and they were working on third edition. And also the other magazine, which was the precursor to the Other Minds magazine we covered earlier today. And then who else did work for Lord of the Rings? One of the better supplements was the Moria box. He had a lot of life questions he had to work around and still try to keep it as true as possible. And he's very knowledgeable on topics. He wrote us at TolkienMoot I. Wow. He was the very first one. John was actually up, so it was Chris.
So this is how many years later now?
Yeah, he actually TolkienMoot 3. So 2005 was the first move. Yep. And so very have him join us remotely. So always on YouTube/TolkienMoot and also on the TolkienMoot.org website. We are broadcasting one of the gaming if you want to join us. There'll be a few minutes delay and then we'll start broadcasting so you can follow the adventures of the group with Steve GMing using Savage Worlds adapted to Middle-earth. Steve and Merlin's downtown, yeah. Great little town store down there. Not so little. All right, everybody, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Read the Fall of Arthur. You can get a copy.
Now when you're picking